Greetings, everyone. Today, as is most of my videos are unplanned, I just happened to stumble upon two quotes, and I wanted to use that. They're going to come from Marcus Garvey's Moral Philosophy and Opinions of Marcus Garvey. These are speeches that he gave in Jamaica and different places in the world. And this book in particular was published in 1977. And the words were true then, they're true now. So I thought I'd weave them in what I have to say today. But before I do that, I want to say that when we tell our stories, people tell their stories for different reasons. Some people tell their story with the aim that it's going to help somebody else or it's going to help them. And so if a person comes out with the mentality that's self-pity in telling their story, they will always remain victims. The individuals who want to make changes and transformation in their life and the life of other people, they tell the story from a different perspective where they're not victims, but they're survivors. And I think we could learn something from that as a people, as opposed to just reiterating our story. And that I am vowed to never forget. But I am going to change the way I tell these stories, even to my children. Because while I tell them these stories, it must be done from a perspective of performance and change, not just about what happened or what continues to be, but a place that empowers not just myself, but those who listen to the story. 2018 must therefore be that year of transformation and change. The way we not necessarily just accept things or accept the status quo, but that we investigate, we analyze the role that we play. Also, I think even in the worst of circumstances, I have said before, there are times when you can evaluate that and you can look at it and you can say, well, what could I do different now? Going forward, what efforts can I put in to ensure that this never happens again? Or if it does happen again, this is how I'd respond. We have to change the way we respond to things, and we have to learn not to be perpetual victims. And though we acknowledge and recognize the struggles and the pain in each other's life, the mindset is what makes the difference, the champion or the loser. So I'm going to employ some words from Marcus Garvey. And the first thing I'm going to do is look at what he calls the Negro psychology. I need my glasses for this because the words are really small. He says the Negro himself, when he was a racial and imperial power, treated the less fortunate races with contempt and did everything to hinder their possible progress. We know that's still true in some places in Africa, that those who are considered to be less fortunate or less deserving, whether it be religious or, class or tribal differences, you see contempt in which some people are treated. He says the white man then did not spend much time in bewailing the disadvantages suffered through Negro domination, but organized his force to successfully combat an overflow of that domination. How well he has succeeded is made evident by his unique position today. And now it becomes the Negro's turn to struggle from beneath. In this struggle, it is advisable not to pay so much attention to the white man in his brutal or unreasonable attitude, but to concentrate on the cooperative forces of race and overcome all threatened difficulties. So, in other words, as opposed to just focus on what we consider to be horrible or abusive or discriminatory practices just focusing on these things, looking at the individual who's done these things to you then and now, you have to find a response to that. Because if you focus on what is being done, at that point you're a victim. When you focus on how to respond to that, then you become a victor. So we spend so much time talking about the ills of society, talking about systematic things that, yes, do hinder us from growing, from progressing, and all that stuff. But we stay there. We don't examine how other persons, other race of people, you name it, have had similar, maybe not some of the horrific things that has happened to us as a people, but have had similar struggles and similar oppression. But their response to it marks the way they are viewed and treated in this world. And I think as Black people, it is our response to these discriminatory practices or these horrific things that have happened to us that causes us to stay stagnant, dormant. Our response is everything to take you from that place of victim to victor or victor. You have to change the way you think, the way you behave. So there's something going on with the Negro's psychology that is causing him or her or they as a collective to remain a second class citizen, to remain powerless. Okay, so Marcus Garvey talks about racial weaknesses. And when I get to the ones that I completely understand and agree with, I will expound on it. He says, it has generally been observed that the Negro has always shown himself a thoughtless and thriftless settler wherever he has been in this modern age. This, it is said, has been accountable for by his lack of knowledge and appreciation for economic wealth and the passing down of his posterity of that wealth as a guarantee of their independence. When proper investigation is made, there are good grounds on which the truthfulness of that statement can be maintained, because an observation of the migratory Negro of modern days show that wherever he has settled, with very few exceptions, he never made such attempt to become a property holder or a political factor. He has always been satisfied to live casually and to move when circumstances force him to do so, and generally through the organized political maneuver of those who can appreciate value and the domination of them. Those who have observed the Negro in his many migratory attempts from one part of the continent to another and from one part of the world to the next realize that his impression on new fields has always been negligible, because after many decades of residence, it is found that he resides without authority, or he is forced out without the power of resistance. In fact, he is not a good colonizer. He has never been able to hold what he has settled on. If he moves from one section of Africa to another, he is still migratory and without local influence. In the Western world, he has traveled from the British colonies to South and Central America and has labored there to build up the entire Spanish Main. And yet, after more than half a century, he is buffeted and kicked about and discriminated against as if he were just a newcomer. The opportunity the Negro had in the pioneering days of American continental development gave him a chance to possess and to control. But we find that after he made his valuable contribution to countries like Peru, Chile, Brazil, the Argentine, Colombia, Central American countries, including Panama, he, unlike the Irish, the Italian, the Scandinavian, or the English, is without a voice in these countries. Even in the United States, he has not been able to colonize with the force of political control and domination. He must always be governed instead of governing. This has been the past weakness of the Negro in modern times, and every sensible member of the race must realize that it has taken him nowhere. We must turn about for a few policy. We must determine the policy of owning where we settle or controlling the environment in which we place ourselves. We must imitate the Irish, the Scots, and the English, even the Germans in this particular. It is because of their workful colonizing ability why they have been able to build up with a great effort British Empire or an empire of the English speaking people as well as the empire of Teutonic peoples. So in other words, he's saying as black people, we migrate around the world, but when we're there, we really never have the effort, or it's not that we don't have the ability, it's because we don't have the interest to become property owners, to become people who actively participate in political, systems and so on and so forth. So it is very difficult for us to gain power, to gain respect when we're not building wealth, not building economic wealth, and not strengthening our ties through community building, not really having the mindset that we are not just people who ought to be colonized, but we should be in a position where we are self colonizers. That would be very strange. He's using the word colonize here and colonizers as not in a negative way, but in fact, or in spite of the negative attributes or aspects of colonizers, he's looking at the positive attributes of these same individuals, what they were able to accomplish. So he's saying it isn't black people alone who have been dominated, because at one point when black people ruled the world, they worked with brute force as well. But those who they dominated and controlled, based on this idea and this art and this article, this speech they gave, the people's response to that is what makes the difference. Feeling sorry for ourselves is a very typical thing that we do as black people. We spend a lot of time. Self-pity is sort of the game. And isn't even as we're feeling sorry for ourselves, the rest of the world is thriving, is adjusting, is learning, is creating. Even as we remain as consumers, seen as consumers, we're not celebrating the fact that we're producers, and that as someone else is determined to learn, to meet up with the modern time, we're busy just holding on to things. For example, some of us, we're so busy. And again, I always talk about this, I heard someone have a conversation the other day, and she says when she says a sign of her success or her progress will be her first Gucci bag that she will own. And then she also named a few other purses that she says, when I have these things, that will be a sign of my success. And one purse was for $2,000, and she was telling you the name of the other purses and whatever, you know, material possession that have no value. That's how we see ourselves. So our governments in our, different African places and Caribbean places see the people, as consumers. They're always finding new commodity to sell us. And everywhere we go in the world, people feel that all they've got to do is find new merchandise to put on the market, to pull us out, to interest us, because we're interested in owning things of no value. So we look at our history, look at our past history, and as horrific as it is, should we just remain in that place where we're just looking back at it and feeling sorry for ourselves? are we looking back on it and learning from those experiences, learning from even the very people who captured you, not undermining, saying, you know, you're either this or that, you're evil and you're bad, and you're not looking at, things that they have done. You can't deny that many conquerors, many colonizers are to be credited with the way society is run today, the great wealth that is amassed by many people, even though they did not lift a hand, the wealth that is distributed in different parts of the world to individuals. Very few, a small percentage of people who have done nothing physically, except to create ways in their mind about how they can continue to improve using your labor, your ideas, your willingness to say that this is good enough for me. All I need is just food and clothing and shelter that I don't really own. We can show how much designer wear we can wear and can buy. So based on what the lady said, her top purses, when she get those three top purses, she would have felt realized. And when you think about it, they were US dollars. It would be about $10,000 worth of products, and she doesn't own a house. Well, not pointing fingers on her, because though that's something that was I was interested in the past, and education was very important to me, and I spent a lot of time pursuing that. But at the same time, yes, as an immigrant, I never entered this place to say, when I come here, I want to leave my footsteps in the sand of time. I want to come here and be a part of the political landscape. I wanted to contribute to perhaps individual, people in the society, but collectively, I wasn't trying to create history. I wasn't thinking about how I can come here and become a landowner. You know, the most I was thinking of is I'd like to have my own home. But I never thought that real estate was something that I could invest in, and I could purchase property and sell them back, or rent to other people, because we were not taught the value and the importance of economics, and we were not taught that we are people who just have the ability to overcome and to surpass that stage where we can just cry and feel sorry for ourselves. Our psychology affects the way we live, it affects the way other people see us. We cry continually, and we fail to understand that as long as you're crying, you're not building. As long as you're able to tell your story and it doesn't end with sadness and tears, but end with a sort of powerful note that says, I overcame that. Look at me now. Not look at the house that I own that the bank still has the note for, or the car that I drive that is depreciated, or the clothing that, fire can destroy. But what we have built, how we have transformed from one stage, though oppression might have started those terrible ordeal, but moving past that, like all our other brothers and sisters in the world, the Asians, the Jewish people, the white folks, we insist on being victims, enjoying that role, repeating that story. This is why we are constantly told the story of slavery. Black History Month is always about slavery, and not Black history should be about who we are as a people, our accomplishments. But when you hear Black history, even Black people think of slavery. That's where it begins and ends for them. We've got to change our mind. We've got to stop feeling sorry for ourselves. We've got to start looking at ourselves as equals, not letting someone treat you as an equal, but you seeing yourself as an equal. And when you see systems in place that is designed to keep you down, you acknowledge it for what it is. But you say, hell no, I will not accept this. I will stand against it, and it doesn't always have to be openly. What better way to stand against oppression than by creating a situation where you're no longer oppressed? Be blessed, everyone.